friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why in each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we're back. I have got a new friend, a very well-awarded friend, which is awesome. But again, jumping ahead, so I'm going to back up and say, welcome, Allie. I'm so glad you could be here with us. Why don't you take a second, tell folks who you are, where you're at, and what you do.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I am an avid listener, and I want to thank you for everything you do for our profession.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Allie Cornejo, and I am Allie the Librarian on social medias. My full name is Alexandra, so you'll see Alexandra a lot, but I answer to Allie these days. And so I'm a high school librarian in deep South Texas, an area that we call the Rio Grande Valley. It's a beautiful area that has a tapestry of different cultures, mostly a beautiful Latino culture that is very much a bilingual area. So I have two beautiful languages that enrich the area. And my students are mostly of a Latino population. And we have a lot of bilingual books that we look at. We have a lot of culture that is infused in our library curriculum. And where I work is actually a specialty high school called Harlingen School of Health Professions. And it caters to students who would like to pursue a career in the medical professions. And it caters from grades 8 through 12, which is a little different than a traditional high school.
Yeah, I saw that. That's interesting.
Exactly. It's a little different, but the formula is to get them started early on their health science courses so that when they graduate, they have really had a robust curriculum full of a variety of health science topics and skills that have been taught to them. They have a Practicum 1 and a Practicum 2 coursework towards the end of their high school career, and they actually go out into the community to help our hospitals and clinics, and they do such a great job. So aside from our bilingual books that we love so much in our area, I'm also infusing a lot of that medical curriculum into my library programming, which really adds a really interesting component to everything that I do, because I have to look at things through that medical lens in order to serve my student population at my high school. Now, I do serve a dual role in my school district. I am also the lead librarian over secondary schools. So that also requires me to coach some of my colleagues, although my colleagues are so incredibly talented and they're so passionate and they're teaching me on a daily basis. So we have a really great team there in my school district. I'm very blessed to be able to lead in the ways that I do. And, sometimes challenges come across our desk with different legislative changes or different collection development rules. And we just do the best we can. We use it as a new opportunity to revamp our processes and serve our students the best we can and continue to provide a collection that has a wide range of perspectives that reflects our students and other cultures around the world.
Love that. It's got to be so interesting to have eighth graders on a medical track? Like I look at the eighth graders I work with and I'm like, boy, I would not want you anywhere near anything medical, but I'm assuming yours is sort of like an elect-in program. Like it's not just a random, like these are kids that want to be there and do this.
These are students who have to make that choice themselves. And we tell them, and they pretty much understand that the commitment to academic work will be very intense starting day one.
Yeah.
All we offer are AP courses, and so, or pre-AP courses. So the workload is, well, I wouldn't say the workload is a lot. I would say the intensity of what they have to do in the classroom and at home, and in terms of project-based learning. We do try to do a lot of personalized learning so that we adapt to the learning style of the student and what their passions and pursuits are. As much as we do that, it's still going to be a very committed type of lifestyle for that student if they do choose to come to our school.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, yes, they're very clever, but they're also just kids.
Yeah.
And there's just kids, and they're squeamish to see blood, and they laugh at certain medical terms, and they're kids at the end of the day. So it's really great to see them grow from an individual who has a minimum knowledge of all things medical. And then they graduate over the course of 5 years into this adult that we focus on trying to make well-rounded. And they've learned all of these skills and medical topics along the way. And they grow into these such incredible individuals that I would be more than happy for them to treat me in a hospital or a clinic. In the 8th grade year, yeah, you're like, but it's so fun to have them because they come in and I love when they ask me, do you have any manga? Do you have any graphic novels? And I'm like, let me show you what I have,
Yeah. Well, this is completely off topic, but I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if you know Matthew No in ALA, but he is a huge medical graphic novels person and is always like looking for the latest and greatest ways we can tie together the medical scene with graphic novel presentation to help everybody, but students particularly kind of get a handle on that kind of stuff. So
I'm not familiar with him. And so
you might want to check out some of he's got some great suggestions and posts about like, oh, this is some stuff that's going down in that area. So just a thought, if your students are looking for manga, maybe there's like some awesome medical manga out there. I don't know, but who knows? There could be.
Who knows? I know of a series that's called Cells at Work, but if there's anything out there that would help entertain / reinforce skills in the medical profession, then that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, and I don't want to throw any shade to your colleagues, but I do have to mention that you are not just you are maybe an average everyday school librarian, but you also have gotten a little bit of recognition for your school librarianship. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about that?
Just a tad. This past year has been a whirlwind of emotion and, yes, recognition that I have never imagined that I would ever receive in my entire life, because I just go do the work that a lot of us are doing out there. And I don't want to say that my work supersedes anybody else's work or is extra spectacular in any way. But I did get the 2026 School Library Journal School Librarian of the Year award. Woo-hoo. And that was, of course, extremely special to me. And I'm very thankful to School Library Journal for, looking at the nomination, which was submitted by a colleague and friend, and seeing how librarians are having this really positive effect in the Rio Grande Valley with a mostly Latino population and all the challenges that we do face in some of our impoverished areas with the bilingual culture that we have. Instead of it being a negative, we turn it into a really beautiful positive by enriching our library programming with the bilingual books and having bilingual book clubs and having a bilingual battle of the books. All of that is, turning what could be a challenge into a beautiful opportunity.
Absolutely.
And all of these things were recognized by School Library Journal, in addition to a lot of the Makerspace things that we're going to talk about today, including the Glowforge. And like I told you before, there's a lot of legislative changes happening in Texas, and it's changed a lot of the processes of how we develop our collection in Texas. And a lot of those things had to change. And we took what could have potentially been a challenge into opportunities to revamp systems, to relearn, go back to basics, and really look at book criteria. And I will tell you that that process really allowed me to, I would say, enrich my skills in evaluating books. And even though the work is harder, it's more challenging. Sometimes we get frustrated, but if it's not us, who's going to do it? And we've been able to take that task and not let it change the heart of what our library programming is. We've allowed it to, we've continued in providing services to our students the best way we know how. And I believe all of those challenges, the Makerspace, being Latina myself, I'm the first Latina school librarian of the year. I'm very proud of that fact. And so I think all of that in a combination, it's been a challenging time, but it's also been a real big learning time. And I'm assuming that perhaps that had a little something to do with the recognition, but I'm just representative of a lot of great librarians out there that are doing the work as well.
That's amazing, man. And, more power to you, and absolute kudos for looking at things that could be challenging and finding the positive in them and finding the ways that you can use that to help you move yourself and your program and your students forward. So I look at some of the stuff that Texas is going through, and I'm angry and frustrated on your behalf. So I'm glad that you are able to find something positive to take from all of that. So, but let's not dwell on that. Let's move on to the good stuff, which is, you had shared this idea that you do with your students, and I love this. So before we get into sort of the details of it, can you give us a little bit of maybe the background of how did you end up sort of working into or walking up to this program and creating it in the first place? What was sort of the origin point?
So are we talking about the Glowforge Makerspace?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was the first librarian in my district to bring in a 3D printer into the library. And that was 2016-ish. And the 3D printer, I remember when we set it up, I got it through a grant at the Texas Library Association. And when I put it in the library, I set it up, I knew nothing about it at all. It was a Lulzbot Taz 6. And once I set it up, luckily it had some very user-friendly instructions. I set up the first test print, and I remember my assistant principal and I were just sitting there watching it print layer by layer and just fascinated. And it did the same with the students. The students saw that technology, and they had everyone heard of 3D printing because it was the buzzword at the moment. But seeing it in your school, in your library, and that you have access to use this wonderful technology whenever you want, because it wasn't for me, it was for our teachers and students. So they would just sit there like, wow, what are you printing, And seeing that wow factor in their eyes and just being floored by this type of technology, it was something that I have always been chasing after since. And yes. And so when I went to a conference called TCA, which is a Texas conference for teachers focusing on education technology.
Okay.
There was a session that I attended about 3D printing. But he said, let me show you something else I'm doing. And he brought out all of these items that he made with his laser cutter. I had never even heard of a laser cutter. And I believe this was probably 2019.
Okay.
And when he brought out like a lightsaber from Star Wars that he had created. He brought out these beautiful LED light acrylic shapes that were lit by LED lights that he had made in his laser cutter. He had just blown our minds. And we asked him over and over again, you made this in your classroom? Because he was a Makerspace teacher. And he says, yes, with a laser cutter. And we said, what? Tell us more about this laser cutter. And so he talked about the Glowforge laser cutter. And that's the only brand I've ever been exposed to because he had mentioned it in the session, but there are many out there now. And when he was talking about this technology, we were floored because he says that it's so much faster than 3D printing. Whatever you imagine, whatever prototype you want to make, you can make it on the Glowforge. It really lends itself to creativity and design. And I thought, man, that is perfect for the library because that's exactly what we're trying to promote. And then we asked for the price. It's thousands of dollars, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went back a little deflated, super inspired. I said, one day it will happen, just not today. And I had a lot of great ideas for 3D printing from that session, but that idea of the laser cutter, it never left my mind. So fast forward, COVID happened and we did the best we can there. But when we were back, there was a great grant opportunity that was presented by an organization that helps my school district with innovative projects in the classroom. And they're not part of the school district. They are an organization, part of the city, not part of the city. It's an independent organization that specifically helps our school district, and they raise money on their own and they give grants in thousands of dollars to different teachers and librarians. So I thought, well, this is my opportunity. I'm going for it. And I wrote up the grant. There was a lot of writing. There was a lot of rewriting. And, you know, I get stuck at the simplest little details like project title. What am I going to title it? You know? Or timeline or expectations. All of these things, they stump me and they seem very simple, but I just want everything to go perfect. So it did take me time and I could have missed that deadline very easily with how slow I was going with the grant, but I was very determined and I did turn it in and I forgot about it completely. So
moving on to the next thing. There's too many things to do. Moving on to the next thing.
Exactly. So I said, I crossed my fingers and I moved on. Some months later, several months later, I see a group coming into the school. Some of them were very familiar faces, but I didn't know who they were. And as the campus unofficial photographer, I knew that there was something they were recognizing someone for. And so I grabbed our camera and I was like, let me just be ready to go take pictures. And then I saw them coming over towards the library. And if you know anything about my library, it's not a closed space. It's an open concept space. So I have 3 walls and an open wall to the rest of the school. So I saw them heading towards the library and I was still thinking, oh, they're going to say, Allie, grab the camera. We're going to go recognize so-and-so. But instead they said, Allie, we have a check for you. And I thought, nice. What? From where? What? and so the Rolodex in my brain was going and I was thinking, what is this from? What is this from? And then they said, you're going to be able to buy that laser cutter that you've always wanted. Nice. And I screamed. I may have gotten a little teary. I mean, the biggest smile on my face, my assistant principal still tells me that was the truest face of surprise that I have ever seen and just the happiest face I had ever seen. And so I was overjoyed that 1, I was going to be able to purchase this technology for the students, and 2, that they would a great return on their investment by investing in libraries. And so that alone just made me extremely happy. And I knew that this was exactly the type of publicity that we need for school libraries because there are incredible things happening in the library that a lot of people don't know. And I knew that not only receiving this grant money, they were going to come back and see how their investment was doing. And they were going to take pictures in a year and they were going to post them on their Facebook or website. And I knew they were going to monitor the way this program was going. And I saw that as a great opportunity to tell this library story.
Absolutely. Man.
So it was probably 3 seconds after that they left. I submitted the requisition to purchase the laser cutter, and we did purchase one from Glowforge. And it does run. It was $5,000, and so that's a hefty amount of money for.
That's not a little bit, yeah.
Exactly. And I have a small head count, and the head count, it kind of decides what your budget is sort of going to be. And
Gotcha.
so that headcount did not give me a huge budget.
Mm-hmm.
I've always have to be very financially conscious when it comes to any of our purchases. And so I was never going to have $5,000 on hand to purchase a laser cutter. So this was such a great opportunity. It was $5,000. And then you also have to buy an air filter. And the grant did not reach the air filter, but my district, they saw what I wanted to do. They believed in the program. And they too invested in this Makerspace program.
That's
yes.
Great.
So I was able to get the whole kit. And when it arrived, we set it up and then we asked, now what?
Yeah. But I think like, even before we get into the, like where you went with this, I want to pause for a second and just point out like when we talk about what school libraries can do, this is one of those things. And I feel like there are schools, my school has an awesome technology education class. The tech ed teacher has invested in a whole bunch of different kinds of 3D printing, like gel printing and UV printing and filament printing and like all sorts of stuff. And I think they even have some sort of a laser cutter. But the students get to use that when they're in that class. And that's pretty much it. And so you're sort of limited in your access to it. Whereas a library, like, it's there for everybody. And whoever's going to come in and use it, like you're getting a school-wide use out of that instead of just a class-wide use out of that. And so, just like books, people talk about, oh, well, why do we need a school library if we have classroom, I'm not going to say library, classroom collections, because they're not really libraries, but we'll get into that. The school library is the answer. Like, this is for everyone, not even just the students, but the staff too. Like, you've got this opportunity for everyone to take advantage of the resource. So I love that you are thinking about that and making sure there's stuff for your students to be able to take advantage of that even go above and beyond what your district might be thinking about. So that's awesome. So kudos on that.
Thank you.
But all that said, you came up with some really cool ideas for how you're going to use this Glowforge. And I'm kind of curious, like how you ended up making the connection between language arts and Glowforge cutter, because that's not one that seems real obvious on the surface.
Absolutely. So every year our English language arts teacher teaches the Great Gatsby, and all of the students know that this is a huge novel study, their 12th grade year. So these were seniors, and it's very hard to impress seniors these days.
Yeah.
They're on their way out and they have these bouts of senioritis, and they're just not impressed by much. So I was already nervous going into this project, but knowing that she did this novel study every year and that she loves it so much, and I love the Great Gatsby too, I thought, let's bring some technology into it. And so when I approached her, which we often have to do as librarians, we have to market ourselves in our library programming. I proposed to do a collaboration that involved the Glowforge. And she said, how on earth are we going to incorporate laser cutting? So I said, let's do a bookmark that will serve as a keepsake from this very special novel study that so many students look forward to their 12th grade year, because it's a legend. They do novel studies every year. However, this one, for some reason, just has legendary status. And so, because the teacher knows it so well, and she is an aficionado on this particular novel, on many novels, but this one in particular. So I said, let's do a bookmark. And she says, a bookmark? Okay. And I go, it's going to be a keepsake, but we're going to incorporate a lot of the elements from Great Gatsby. Let me just think about it for a little bit. So she says, all right, kid, I'm going to give you a chance, So I went to my desk and I thought, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And so I researched a lot of the elements having to do with the Great Gatsby. And a huge part of the Great Gatsby is that it happens during the Roaring Twenties, which is just such a fascinating time. One of the biggest parts of this time period is that Art Deco comes onto the scene. And so you're going from Victorian furnishings and that are very ornate and floral, and you have gold etched items and things that are just people try to make very beautiful. And now the transition is being made to an Art Deco style, which is very clean. You have straight lines, you have geometric shapes, you have nothing as ornate as we saw in Victorian times or things of that era. In addition to Art Deco, the style of dress was changing. You're going from ankle-length dresses to knee-high dresses. You're going from long flowing hair, always pinned up in a nice, beautiful bun, that is now loose hair that is bobbed at the chin. And the men were also going through fashion changes. So not only this, but women are not the demure ladies that, that persona of being demure, that they did not drink alcohol. They're suddenly rebelling and they're saying, we're going to get jobs. We're going to go out with our husbands and our friends and we're going to partake in the good times. And it's just a really fascinating time to see people go against society's norms. And you see all of that lavish extravagance in The Great Gatsby, and Art Deco at the time was not only influencing decorations of when you walked into buildings or art, but it was influencing architecture. So I thought all of that was just very fascinating. And how can we bring it to a bookmark?
Yeah.
So I proposed to my English language arts teacher. I told her, I'm going to give them a whole lesson in Art Deco and the changing times and fashion, and just really blow their minds of the huge drastic change of the style before and how it changed into what we had in the Roaring Twenties, and how that was a result of World War I and a lot of the devastating losses in World War I. And, there's a lot of components to why there was such drastic change. And then I said, and then we're going to take that and we're going to apply the Art Deco style into our bookmarks using Canva. And we're also going to take quotes that resonated with them from The Great Gatsby and apply it into our bookmark. And we're going to use beautiful silhouettes of women and men from the Roaring Twenties, and we're going to apply it to our bookmarks. And so we had those lessons in the library. We did some research. I had a slides presentation. We watched some videos. We saw many, many, many images because these are mostly visual learners nowadays. And you saw these students just look at a part of history that they had probably heard of at the very surface, but never have really dug down deep into the era. And they loved it. I had their attention from the first second to the last second. And when I said, okay, we're going to take all of this knowledge that we just acquired and we're going to put it into creativity in Canva. And I had them open up a Canva assignment that I had sent to them, which had the bookmark template. And I gave them the parameters of what I wanted them to use. You're going to use Art Deco. What does that involve? Straight lines, geometric shapes, a lot of diamond shape incorporated into decorations. You're going to use silhouettes. You're going to use quotes. And then I told them also the best practices when using a Glowforge. It's a laser cutting into material. There's no color. So don't bother using any color, but start thinking in shades of gray, from black to white, and what makes a lighter shade. So if you want a lighter shade, you're going to use a light gray. If you want a really dark etching into the bookmark, you're going to use black. And so don't worry about color. Just worry about, you think in terms of shades of gray. So
that's interesting. And I love that sort of like ties into what you're talking about, going from the flashy, spangly Victorian into a more not subdued, but a more clean aesthetic in Art Deco. Like even that ties together. And taking all of that and tying it to the background lesson that is going to help these students understand the reading is brilliant. So love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
they've got their Canva. They're thinking about not coloring, but I am thinking about shades of gray. I'm thinking about what I want to apply. Where are they going from there?
So from there, they did their design on Canva. And many of them went through many iterations. I mean, they would design and I go through the same thing and I think, I hate it. And they would start from the beginning. And I told them time's a factor. Class is going to end very soon. But they started to be very protective of this design because they knew that I was going to laser cut it and that they would be able to take it as a keepsake and they were going to keep it forever. And so once they were satisfied with that, they sent the design to me. And of course, I sent that report over to their teacher so that she could take it as a participation grade. She took it as some sort of grade. But I don't concern myself with grades.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and sent that to the teacher. But as I was looking at their designs, none of them were the same. They were all so unique in nature. And I could see their personalities shine through these designs. And I know that if I had given them this task before we took a deep dive into the Roaring Twenties and Art Deco, there's no way they would have produced these designs. I knew it was through the dedicated time that we spent in learning about these topics that was able to produce these beautifully designed creations that were so reflective of the novel itself, the time, the style, and I was so proud of what they produced. So then what I did is, of course, it's only one laser cutter, but I was able to cut 10 at a time. So I already had pre-cut bookmarks that were made out of plywood, very inexpensive to purchase on places like Amazon. You can buy the Glowforge product, which goes on sale quite often. And you have different types of quality to all of these products depending on price range, but you find a little sweet spot and you figure out which materials work best for what projects as time goes on. And so on the big screen, I showed them the Glowforge software, which is all web-based. You go to their website and you log in using credentials. And I showed them how I was going to apply their PNG file of design that I had downloaded and place it into the software. The Glowforge itself has a camera inside. So when you close the lid, there's a camera that's glued to the top and it'll give you a live feed of what is in the Glowforge itself. So cool. So I showed them how they were dragging their PNG file over on top of the bookmarks themselves, and I organized it. And then I got a volunteer student to come up and go on my laptop. And I said, okay, now click on this icon because you have to focus the camera. And so they focused it. I told them how to adjust the parameters for what materials were being used, for the power percentage that we were going to use in terms of the laser, for how many lines per second were going to be printed. These are all things that there's an auto selection of how to laser cut, or you can do a manual version and where you can play with all the settings. And so I was having them go through the manual version so that they can see all of the different toggles and ranges that they could play around with to get a different result.
And you turned it into a technology literacy lesson at the same time that you're also adding book information to their brain. So this is great.
Exactly.
The more you can layer in, the better. That's awesome.
I wish everyone had a chance to play with the technology, but they were seeing it on the big screen. And that one student, they were following directions so wonderfully. We were getting questions from the students in terms of, why are we doing that? And what difference does that make if we toggle that on, or if we make the laser go faster, or if we make the laser go slower? And so these questions were really great because they were genuinely interested in what the laser cutter could do. Finally, we sent them to print. It took an hour. So they had already left the library. They were off on the rest of their day. But I took all of their bookmarks. Once I finished printing all of them, I took all of them to their teacher for her to distribute. And she was like, no, you need to come back and you need to see them.
Oh, that's
Receive
awesome.
these bookmarks. And I said, oh, okay. And so she was seeing them every other day. So I waited another day and I went to go deliver the bookmarks, and their faces will be etched in my mind for the rest of my life. And they said, this is the coolest thing we've ever done. And those little
Totally awesome.
moments, yes.
Yeah.
And it was reminiscent of that first moment when I brought the 3D printer in and I would see their little faces just completely fascinated. And I did show them how the laser cut cuts, because it is a clear top lid that it has. And so they would watch with fascination, just like back in 2016 with that first 3D printer. And I was like, yes, this is happening. It's good. This is a good thing. And so they labeled it as the coolest thing they've ever done. And I was just so great that this was a product out of the library. And now this is a solidified project that happens every year with English language arts. Yeah.
Man. And I have to imagine for them, like, part of the effort that they're putting in to design them in the first place and their enjoyment of having that product is that they probably don't get to make a lot of things in school that they can sort of take with them. And it's not just like, I'm doing a diorama and it's for one class. And when we're over, like, the diorama, you're not keeping a diorama on your shelf, but like, they've now got this permanent element that they are taking with them, that they have been able to put some of themselves into. That's got to be such a great part of a great element of motivation, but also just a really awesome moment for them to be like, oh, the things I do in school can translate out into other things. I can take this with me, like, literally not just figuratively with my knowledge, but literally take this with me as I move on to other stuff. That's awesome.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Steve, because as time has gone on with having this laser cutter, they have brought a lot of personal projects in that they are more than welcome to use the laser cutter with. But I have come to the realization that exposing them to this type of technology can serve them in the future when they graduate. Not everyone is going to want to go to college. Not everyone is going to go to Harvard or Yale or, Some of them will want to go the small business way. And so what if one of them applies for a small business loan or a $10,000 loan and purchases a Glowforge for themselves or any type of laser cutter and creates a small business for themselves? And there is a lot of money to be made with these personalized products. And
Absolutely.
I think the only thing that's stopping you is how creative you can get, and if you are creative at the heart of everything you do and you have been taught along the years to hone that creativity and to have had many opportunities to be creative and have been exposed to platforms like Canva, platforms like the Glowforge, and it's done in a school library, and you've been armed with skills that you can take into your future and, possibly be a small business owner and be very successful. And
Absolutely.
So it's been really, really exciting to see the students who have come to the library on their own to use this in their spare time and design on their own and create these really beautiful products on the laser cutter. And I get really excited, and I think to myself, they're going to buy one on their own as soon as they have adult money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so
it's
funny that you mentioned that, because a friend of mine, his wife does like different kinds of craft and design stuff, and she started an Etsy store and she's selling stuff. And they went to a craft fair, they set up a booth, and the guy next to them had a 3D printer. And he was 3D printing stuff. And my buddy got talking to this guy about like, oh, what do you do? How'd you get into this? And the guy was telling him that he started with like a real basic, the least expensive 3D printer he could find. And he started doing stuff and figured out how it works. And he started selling these things at craft fairs. And within almost no time, he had paid for the first printer, bought a better version of the printer because now he's making money from that. And he's just been rolling his money into better and better printers and better products. And now he
Yes.
does this full time. Like this is what he had a full-time job and he quit it so that he could do this because he's making more money and he enjoys it more. So like you're giving your students that leg up into a world where we are seeing more and more custom elements being put together, but also just if you're exploring your creativity, like people want human made, like creative products, and you're giving them that leg up into that potential area that they can get into if that's where they want to go. So that's so awesome. Boy, I love that. Man, that's so great. The other thing I love, and you mentioned this earlier, like way earlier, you were saying how you love Gatsby and your ELA teacher loves Gatsby. And I love that you're bringing that passion to this project, because so often I feel like kids have to, like, there's curriculum we have to teach. And so the students get to march through it, and we don't love everything we teach. There's stuff we have to do. But when we can find those things that we can really grab onto, our enjoyment comes through in what we teach, and our enjoyment is going to be reflected in the students, and they're going to see that interest, that passion, and it's going to help fuel them as they get into these things. And it gives them a better hook, a better handle on the information as they're getting into it. But it also just is such a great way to share what we love and show them that, yes, you can love this stuff. It's okay. And look at what we can do when we love something. Like, look at how we can explore it. Look at how we can expand on it. So many great things you're doing with this. Boy, so awesome.
You're right. It's very infectious when you see a teacher who is so, I don't want to say fixated, or obsessed, but they take great joy and a lot of time to really make these lessons enjoyable and something to look forward to. And like I said, everyone knows about this 12th grade teacher's novel study for The Great Gatsby. And I think the enthusiasm that she has over that novel study in particular, I have that same enthusiasm over books in general and bringing these books to my students. And so I am very big into book talking. At the beginning of whatever I do, if it's that lesson on The Great Gatsby, if it's teaching them email etiquette, if it's going into a lesson of digital literacy or digital citizenship, I always say, and now a word from our sponsors. And I take out 7 books. Usually it's like 6 or 7 books, and I book talk them. And I book talk them with a lot of joy on my face, with a lot of enthusiasm. I read a lot just so I can do these book talks. And I will tell you that at the end and I always stand them up in a table near me, and at the end of every lesson, when the bell's about to ring, I always get questions. Ma'am, can I see that book that you were talking about with so-and-so and so? And all of them will be gone. And I think the biggest problem I have is having enough books to book talk when it's lesson days, because they all go. And
that's awesome.
And I think that's the power of the book talk. And like you said, it's the power of that infectious joy and enthusiasm that you put into the things that you really, truly love, like that English teacher with The Great Gatsby and me with book talking books.
Absolutely. And so usually I'll ask about doing some differentiation or, using this with different groups of students, but it sounds like you've got a relatively homogeneous student body at your school. Like, it sounds like the students are sort of working at similar levels and with sort of similar backgrounds. Is that true?
Very true. However, we do partner with our Transition Academy that is located right down the road. And the Transition Academy is dedicated to students who they've graduated, but they're transitioning to that adult life, and they were formerly life skills students.
Gotcha.
And those students are doing wonderful things at the academy. They're learning beautiful skills like baking and beautiful landscapes and topiary. And it's just really wonderful things that they're doing. But we have invited them over to our library, and we have had them design on Canva. And some of them have chosen to use different elements in Canva to create a bookmark like we did with The Great Gatsby. But Canva has a great option where you can design by drawing with your finger. So on the left-hand side navigation menu, there's an icon that says draw. and I had them select the draw option. And on iPads, they did design what they wanted to. I told them to do a design of their favorite things. So what are your favorite things? And a lot of them said Dallas Cowboys, and some of them said puppies, and I like cats. And so whatever they're really passionate about, I told them, I want you to draw that on your bookmark. And then we laser cut them, and they all were gathered around the Glowforge looking at them being laser cut, and they were able to take them with them, and they loved the activity. And that's something that we've been able to continue to do.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about this lesson too, is that it is very much like you can bring just about any artistic element to it, and it doesn't have to be tied to the Great Gatsby. It can be any subject, any book, any whatever. And when you're giving the students the opportunity to just explore their artistic side, not something they always get to do in a lot of their classes, and not something they always get to do in the library. But now you're bringing it into, not only are they exploring the artistic elements, but you're also adding this technology literacy element to it that's going to offer them, like we talked about, some other opportunities possibly in the future, but also giving them an actual product when that they're walking away with that they can hang on to. Man, so cool.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know that you're using, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. These kiddos, we're forcing them to grow up so fast, and we're pushing all of this serious curriculum on them all the time. So I'm glad that the library can be a respite from all of that intense learning. And I'm very grateful to the teachers at my school to grant me that very precious time out of their classroom time to bring their students. But I think that's the trust that I've built with the teachers. They know that the time that they bring their students in will be time that'll be worth it, because I will have researched, I will have planned meticulously to make sure that we stay within our time, and that they will walk away with a very important skill that will be able to be used sometime during their high school career, in their curriculum, in their classroom. It will enrich them in some way that will be worth it. And so I'm very thankful to have built that trust, but you have to start building that trust as soon as possible, making sure that you make good on the, lessons that are research-based that you give in the library, so that they will give up that precious classroom time to you. And
absolutely.
That's just a great working relationship that we have at my school, and that I've seen a lot of librarians be able to develop that trust at their schools.
And I think that speaks a lot to what you're doing in your school, that the teachers are recognizing the effort and the time you're taking, the skill that you are providing to help their students move forward in ways that they may not otherwise have been able to move forward. So that's kudos to you for getting the teachers to see that and understand what an important element you can be to support their classes. That's great.
Thank you.
I know we've been talking about Glowforge, and I love it. I remember many, many moons ago, they used to run ads for the Glowforge in the back of Popular Science, like way back in the day when I was still reading paper magazines, and I'd look at it and go, oh my gosh, $10,000, but look at all the things you can do. Awesome that they're less than that now, but I don't know if I'm going to have $5,000 to put in my budget, but certainly A, grants, but B, like there's so many other ways you could adapt this lesson. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be a Glowforge based lesson. Like you're really showing them how to sort of look at the time period and think about the design elements that are there. And that's something that you could apply in lots of different ways. And it doesn't necessarily have to be technology driven, although I love that you are layering in the technology too. It's so great. So many things that so many directions this can go, and I love it. It's so great. Boy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a versatile concept, and it could be adapted into a high-tech, mid-tech, no-tech type of situation of any type of makerspace or any type of library programming. And I think that's the beauty of the school librarian, that they take what they have in resources, and they are able to adapt certain subject matter and apply it to the resources that they do have. And we can make a great lesson out of it. And that's just the nature of the school librarian.
Absolutely. Man. Well, this lesson is awesome. I'm so glad you came and shared it. We're going to take a 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Squiddy!
Yay.
So, It is time for those book talks you love so much. So anything you want to share, personal, professional, whatever, it can be for us. It could be for the students. It could be for just, the staff, whatever you got that you want to put on people's reading radar. What do you want to bring our way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to set up these personal reading challenges. And one of them is right now I'm reading through the Tejas list, which is a Texas reading list by the Texas Library Association. And it focuses on YA books. So I am not even halfway. I think I'm a third of the way. And it's a no pressure reading challenge. If I don't make it, that's okay by the end of the year. But one of the books that is on the Tejas list, and I do encourage everyone to look up the Tejas list because it is a fantastic curated list of wonderful YA books that would be great in any YA collection library. And so one of them is Under the Same Stars by Libba Bray. Libba Bray is the author of The Diviners. And this particular book came out recently. And it follows 3 stories at 3 different times. One of them is most recently during the COVID era when a lot of protests were happening. Another story was happening during the 1980s in the punk rock era in Berlin, Germany. And the other is taking place in Germany during World War II. And yes, and so it follows these 3 stories, and the most interesting story that I was completely hooked to, but all of them were fabulous, was the punk rock era. And so it follows this young lady who moves from Dallas to Germany, to Berlin, because her father got a new job. And as she's exploring Berlin, she comes across some punk rockers. And she initially gets scared because she has never been on her own. Walking on her own in Berlin is already very rebellious of her. But then she comes across these punk rock types with their mohawks and their black hole eyeliner and their spiked collars. I mean, just the whole 9 yards. But one of them approaches her and offers to show her around Berlin. And with apprehension, she still says yes. And they go around Berlin, and this punk rocker exposes her to the nature of punk rock and the music and the reason why there was such rebellion with these individuals in Berlin. And at the same time, there was the Berlin Wall that was up. And the punk rocker that was showing her around was originally from East Berlin. And she starts to talk about the struggles between East Berlin and West Berlin and how there's family that is, families separated by this wall and the injustices and how that resonates through the music that they create and these bands. And eventually this young girl becomes part of her punk rock band. And a lot of these songs that they sing are in the text of the book. And you really feel the rebellion and the passion that comes through these songs. And that's just the brilliant writing of Libba Bray. And so you do feel that this is about the injustices of that time. And if you go to the World War II part of the story, it's about these 2 young girls. One of them is in the Hitler Youth. The other just wants to reenact fairy tales. But this whole war is going around them. And it's about their reaction to the injustices that are happening to them in the World War II era and how they just can't be kids. The decisions being made by the adults around them and the decision makers around them really affect them, and they can't just live. And then the COVID era, it talks a lot about the controversies of the time, masks and just different fights that were happening and how students and youth were having to just navigate life through that time with very huge controversies happening around them, and they're being forced to pick a side. And so these 3 stories eventually, in Libba Bray's brilliance, they connect all 3 of them somehow at the end. And that was just flooring. That book is a masterpiece, and I believe it will be a classic. And I feel like everyone should read that book because it teaches you so much. And never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be fascinated and blown away by the punk rock era, but I am. And I came away with a newfound appreciation and knowledge of that whole era and what it means and its nature and its origins and the great music that came out of it. And so, bravo, Librarian. Other honorable mentions, or just as good, honestly, but we just don't have the time. Sisters in the Wind by Angeline Bully. She has written another masterpiece of a book. Every book she writes is wonderful. And this one was a great story from start to finish. Such a great appreciation that you have for Native American languages because she infuses all of her books with these Native American, I believe they're Ojibwe phrases. And, by the end, and you had to say, thank you, I appreciate you, all because she takes the time to thoughtfully select these certain Native American phrases and put them in her books. So that alone is a huge lesson for our students, a great exposure to another culture. And another one is the Who to F series. I am so looking forward to her new addition to that series. But I've read the first 3 books, I think, right now that are out over some years. And every one is so fantastic because you really, me being from the Rio Grande Valley in deep South Texas, I live in a bubble and don't have a lot of exposure to other cultures because it's mostly a Latino culture. Unless I'm reading it in a book or watching it in a movie, or I travel outside of my area. But a lot of my students don't have that access to travel and experience other cultures. So a lot of their exposure happens through books. And this is a wonderful opportunity that really enlightened me at how big of a community there was in Dearborn, Michigan. And who talks about that and how she talks about how they have different, ways in their culture. And she's from Islam, right? She's a Muslim, and there's a huge Muslim community in Dearborn, Michigan. And she talks about her everyday life trying to be a normal teenager on that path of self-discovery. Do I like this? Do I like that? Do I want to project this persona like I don't care? Or should I really? Because I really do care. It's just so hard being a teenager and then living the life that your parents want you to live. They don't want her to lose her Muslim culture to a Western culture. They want her to stay true to all of their what they do every day. They pray several times a day, and she doesn't lose that. She stays true to it. But it's a struggle with her all the time because she's just a regular teen trying to get through every single day. And she does it with such humor, and she does it with such, I feel it lends itself so well to normal teenage life.
Yes,
and
very
it
much.
has so many laugh out loud moments in that graphic novel series. And I love the vibrancy of the art in that graphic novel series. Everything's so, the facial features and their expressions really add so much to the text of the story. And I feel that visual literacy is something that we really need to push with our students. And the Who to F series is a fantastic tool to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they're also, although they're fiction, they're like lightly fictionalized autobiographies, really, because they're her life living through that actual situation. So I love that there's that grounding in like, this is not just a made up story that you're reading about. Like, people actually go through this. So, and graphic novels, gotta love them. So I love the Who to F books. So great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the struggle with her parents. That's also so teen-like, you have the parents want you to do things a certain way and you just don't want to. And that resonates with every single teenager on planet Earth because that struggle is always going to be there. And that one she wrote so well. I mean, that had me laughing. That had me wanting to cry because I'm a parent of a teen myself, And so just brilliant writing there. And I think we're just so blessed to be in an era of such brilliant authors and illustrators. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Totally agree. Man. So we've got an awesome lesson. We've got awesome books. Thank you so much for coming and sharing. I know people are going to want to check you out online because you're always sharing great ideas and thoughts. So where should they go looking for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram and TikTok, I am Allie the Librarian. That's my handle. And on X, which I really don't post on anymore, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I creep on there, but that's Allie Librarian. But mostly if you just type in Allie the Librarian, I'll probably pop up. And I do like to share a lot of things happening in the library. Sometimes it's silly stuff that hopefully people get a giggle from. And I know over the summer, we're resting, we're recharging. So things were a little sparse here and there, but the school year's starting and I'm so excited to start sharing and getting ideas from my PLN because my PLN is amazing. And I get inspiration from them every single day. So my saved posts are probably in the thousands because there's so much brilliant stuff happening within my PLN on social media. But yeah, Allie the Librarian.
Dude, you gotta add Allie to your PLN because she is gonna just rock your world. So thank you. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to come and share all this. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.